Could you just introduce yourself, who you are, what your role is, and where you work?
I can definitely do that. So my name is Fabrice Roussel. I'm from France, and I'm working as a race engineer for Formula E for Porsche AG. And next year in season 9, I will be on duty for our customer team, so Andretti Racing. Keep looking after Andre Lotter, because I was already looking at in the factory team the last 3 years. So that's what I do.
Great, thank you. Now, can you just explain what a race engineer is without being too technical, just for those people who maybe aren't into engineering yet?
Yeah, actually, it's not the most technical job of a racing team, so that's a good way to introduce it. We are just a little piece in the race team that try to bring everything together, putting a little bit of oil on all the gears, so that everything line up quite nicely to extract the best performance out of the car, out of the driver, and out of the race strategy. So it's more, I would say, a management job, taking information from various experts, from various instances that can be, for instance, the FIA on the sporting side, and trying to combine all that together in the most harmonious manner, how should I say, such that we can really extract the best out of that the given situation we are dealing with. So there is a bit of technical understanding and background, obviously, remain an engineering job, but it's mostly coordinating people and having full control of the situation, full control and understanding of what we have to deal with, and ultimately trying to get a good result out of that.
What would you say the biggest difference is between a race engineer and the other engineers in the pit lane?
Well, basically, a race engineer is expert in nothing but has to know about everything. But that's really what it is. There is hopefully people around us which are far more expert and far more smart in their specific area, in their specific domains. And the role of the race engineer is to have a good enough understanding in all of these domains that we can take, let's say, a wise decision when there is a decision to be made. Because it's not rare that two domains may have two different or an opposite requirements. So you need to try to balance things out and go towards the direction that you believe is the best. But for that, you need to basically be supported by all those experts. It can be tire specialists, can be engine specialists, can be aerodynamician, can be a race strategist. And you need to understand all this information. So you need a bit of understanding of everything, such that you can take this decision. But you know to the finest detail as those guys did. And that's basically the biggest difference. You have a much bigger picture on everything, but obviously you can't go to as much level of detail that the expert will be able to do. And that is not required that you are able to do that, because you know that you can contact that expert and he can then explain you at the time what you need to understand at this point in time. So that's come back to the role of managing people. That's exactly what we do. You need the technical background, because obviously at some point the conversation will become technical, but the main difference is we are more generalists and more into management than most of the other engineers. If you take a tire specialist, I think he can take about tires for days and days and days. I think after 2 hours I will be pretty much done, to be honest. But that's if you will have to explain it relatively simply, that will be the best definition you can have.
So can we ask, at what point did you want to become an engineer, and did you see yourself in this career, and did you see yourself in this role in the past, or did you land into it more by chance?
I think I was probably, okay, let's not say 6. I think when I was 6, I was dreaming of being a fireman or policeman, or I don't know, some sort of superhero still, but I would say 7 or 8. No, basically I had the chance to grow up not far from a racetrack in south of France, which is a little famous, and I was by road 7 kilometers from the track, so I think flying distance must be 3 or 4. And those track which is Paul Ricard in France, was quite famous for his long straight line, and a lot of teams use it as a rehearsal of the 24 hours of Le Mans. And when I was 7 or 8, it was the golden era of the Group C and the sport prototype. So very fascinating piece of machinery, and they were extremely loud. And I was simply fascinated by that sound that I could hear from home, and saying, what is that? And that's probably where I developed the interest into racing. I mean, no one in my family is into racing at all. I mean, my dad got to watch some Formula One race, but that was more when he was boring on a Sunday afternoon than by pure passion, I would say. So yeah, I just got fascinated by that, and I developed that passion myself. And strangely, quite early on in engineering, I didn't dream about being a driver. I would have been a terrible one anyway. But no, I was more fascinated by again, it was really related to the sound of those engines. So I need to understand how it's possible to have something screaming like hell like that. So I need to understand what's going on there, and that's how I developed the interest into racing. And yeah, a few years later, I mean, obviously at 7 or 8, I was too young to understand anything. But a few years later, when I was probably at college, and I started to have an understanding of what a race team was, or it was working, what the roles were. And facilitated with the TV coverage as well, and the broadcast of radio communication, which we could have access quite early on, especially with racing in the US, where everything was pushed to that direction. The role of race engineer became one which I had quite a bit of interest with. Not knowing at all what would have been behind, to be honest. But he was looking cool then, like quite in the spotlight, and like yeah. So that's what I wanted to do. There was no other path, basically.
So if you were fascinated with the loud cars, how come you've ended up in Formula E?
That's a good question. Well, there is few aspects beyond that. First of all, it's by far the hardest engineering challenges that I had to overcome in my entire racing career. It's by far the most difficult series in many aspects, in vehicle dynamics and in race strategy as well. Far more complex than everything I have done. So and that is still true today. So obviously the engineering challenges is something that is quite appealing to me. The second reason I would say is also because it's one of the rare series where you can have in-season development. So yes, the hardware of the car are fixed for a year, but you need to think about the following year coming. So you need to kind of identify the weaknesses of your current package such that you can improve the next package. So there is a bit of development with, let's say, a medium-term view, but there is also a much shorter-term view in terms of software development and basically control system that we have embedded in the car, and that we can at the moment still update quite regularly. So the development is also something quite interesting, because when you are an engineer and you have a given package that is homologated for 2 or 3 years, which is the trend in many other racing series for obvious cost reasons. So it also makes sense, don't get me wrong. But when you have somewhere the chance to do some development work, and some other where you're more limited in development work, that's something which is appealing to you. So that's the second reason why I was attracted by Formula E. And the third one, even if it's maybe a longer debate and then probably not yet the place to here to discuss about it, is the fact that it's probably at the moment the more sustainable racing series, and is not just because of electric machine, because it's again a longer debate, but there is many action taken by the series to limit the environmental footprint of the series on the planet. And I mean, now in 2022 is something that you can't completely ignore, and therefore that was also appealing. A concrete example for that is just the limitation of tires usage. We have 2 sets of tires per car for a race weekend. If I'm not mistaken, it's something like 7 or 8 for a normal endurance race from the World Championship in hypercar or LMP2 categories and GT categories. And it's a completely massive amount of tire set in Formula One. I think something like 18. So something simple like that. There is many action like that make the series a bit more sustainable. So there was quite a few things lining up that was calling me to Formula E basically.
So we know why you got to Formula E and why you chose it. How did you get there? What, in terms of your career progression, what jobs did you start out with? Did you go straight to Formula E? What was the route for you?
No. That was a late call, basically. Well, a late call. No, I mean, usually a track side engineer career is relatively close to the one of a racing driver. So you usually start with a more junior role into the junior categories, and then you progress your way through roles and series. So you usually start in the junior Formula Renault, Formula Regional, I think is called nowadays, category, which is basically the step just after karting. And you usually start with the role of data engineer, then moving into performance engineer. And after a few years in the role, you try to step the one step in the ladder, I would say, and go to a more advanced series, and then you do a few time there, and then eventually you try to change role. So it's always kind of going into a role, then from that role going into in the same category into the next role, then when you are into that next role, you try to stay in that next role in the same category, then step a category. You're always kind of doing kind of horizontal climbing, you know, once role, one series, then once role, then one series. And yeah, I was initially so doing this ladder from junior to the most senior and the most high-end single seaters, and I got quickly bored with single seaters because basically it was pretty much like watching a race at home. You know, you do all the job before, and then green light goes on, driver race. He does what he does, and then you see checker, and that's fantastic. You just watch the race. It's just like, it's not from the sofa at home, it's from the pit wall. So that was a bit frustrating. I wanted to have a bigger impact into the racing result, and I was still fascinated by this machine that I was hearing when I was 7 or 8 years old. I was racing in Le Mans, and I wanted to go into endurance racing. So that was, let's say, the second stage of my career, going into endurance racing. Engineering prototypes, so LMP2 and LMP1 car, doing Le Mans, doing the great race in the US like Daytona, Sebring, Petit Le Mans, which are very famous race for sports car in the US, racing in Europe, racing WEC, and I really enjoyed it, and that's, I think, where my heart belongs still today, because that's really that's what created my passion to motorsport. And to be honest, racing for 6, 8, or 24 hours is such a challenge on your mental, I would say, that I still really love it. And yeah, I mean, how it started with Formula E, it started simply that when the series got created, basically, I mean, it didn't have any yet credit, any reputation, I mean, nothing. So they have to establish everything. They did not have really race team. So they have this gamble on making the, let's say, a winter series when everything was stopped in Europe for obvious reason, to try to race those cars. And basically it was a collection of personnel from other racing series coming into Formula E at the beginning. So that was team from GP2, team from GP3, or from GT cars that were just operating car in the winter, keeping basically some activities there and some finance, obviously. And that's how I got in, basically trying to have a bit of activities from December to March, when it was a bit more done in Europe. And from that, let's say, sideline activities, it became a full-time job 3 years later. So that just shows also the development of the series, how it got really when the manufacturer started to get involved, and the series professionalized. So and I think that story relates to quite a few people in the championship, to be honest. because it's really how it started. I mean, it was really racing during winter when there was not much to do in Europe.
All right, that's very cool. Your job is obviously a dream job for a lot of people, me included. And so I know, and probably some of our listeners as well, that you work trackside, obviously. And so one would wonder, what's your office job? What does your office job look like, or what do you do during the week normally?
There are two aspects. There is one aspect which is very simple, which is when we go to work in the driver in the loop simulator, preparing a race weekend, and here the job pretty much looks like at the track, to be honest. It's just that you are not seeing the world, and you're locked into a relatively dark room. But the activities is relatively similar to the track in terms of session planning, analyzing, communication with the driver, etc., etc. So this one is a big part of our time, because during the racing season, and especially when you look at the calendar of Formula E for next year, for instance, it's basically racing 1 week, then 1 week break, so racing then for the following week. So if you then put the traveling, you know that you have only that week off in the middle where you can start to do some simulator work, and simulator work is quite a big part in preparing a race weekend. So if I project myself from January to June next year, it will pretty much the same activity all the time. So racetrack simulator, racetrack simulator, racetrack simulator, and there the job is relatively similar. When we are not in the simulator, it's, I mean, a relatively normal office job. It's a lot of meeting, a lot of reporting, a lot of analysis and discussion. But there is no secret. We group together. Everyone is given some tasks, some analysis to do, such that we can discuss the outcome of those analyses. So you produce a report, you present the report, then people ask questions, and then from there you define the next step in terms of development. So it's a lot of Excel, PowerPoint, email exchange, Teams calls, and stuff like that. So it relates to almost everyone job. I'm sorry, it's not that dreamful, I have to say.
All right, so well, you've now told us what you do when you're not at the track, but what do you do when you are at the track? So what does a day in your life trackside look like?
It looks like you start very early in the morning and you finish very late in the evening, and you don't sleep much. So most of the trackside engineers are mechanics, by the way, because it's not only engineers. That can be mechanics, that can be, I mean, we talk about the many roles in motorsports, and we could expand on that later on. But I think first of all, you need to be a little bit crazy and don't like sleeping much or being coffee addicted. And then probably a collection of all of that. So it starts very early and finish very late. Obviously, if it's a day you're running, it's quite different than if it's the day you install. So if I go through a typical Formula E weekend, for instance, which is pretty much the same in all racing series, the first thing you arrive when you are at the track is build up your garage. I think there is only maybe in Formula One where they have dedicated team just to build up the garage. And even now, I'm not so sure with cost cap anymore, to be honest. But the first thing is you arrive, you have an empty box, an empty tent in the case of Formula E, but it's the same if you're on a normal racetrack. It's completely empty, and you have to build everything. Building everything means the shiny and nice part that you see with the TV and the nice panel, LED light to put the driver display, the driver helmet on display and stuff like that. But before you have to put that, there is a lot of cable to be laid on, either power cables and net cables. So building up the garage, the whole team together is usually a good half day, I would say, to build everything. And then once this job is done, basically you start finalizing your note in terms of preparation. That's usually when the first meeting with the driver will happen is the evening of the first day you install. The driver usually travel a bit later or travel early but are busy with some sponsoring or marketing activities. And usually, I use the afternoon to collect my note, the summary of what we learned from the simulator session or all the simulation we do offline as well. So before the events, including also reporting of the previous year, what happened in the last race, a bit of video analysis, how was the race start of the last year races if it's a venue we already been. So that's all the stuff you prepare weeks ahead. You collect and you put the last touch on that, and then you present that to the driver, such he has all the required information for the weekend. The following day usually is more about the planning itself. So it's again, everything is prepared in advance. That's why we are. I mean, you start to prepare a race weekend 3 weeks to 1 month in advance roughly, and you just putting everything together when you're at the racetrack. So the second day usually I put the last touch on the information I want to display to the mechanics, to the other engineers, to the team management, in terms of what is the plan for the race weekend, what is our goal, which setup do we start, why are we starting on this setup, what are the evolution compared to the previous race, for instance, what is the plan for all the free practice session, what is at the moment our ideal qualifying strategy, for instance. You basically present your plan of the weekend and the reason behind, because I mean, it's not mandatory that they adhere to the plan, but if they do, it's quite makes your life easier for the rest of the week. To be honest, you don't have to justify yourself every 2 minutes. Then we go usually to the technical scrutineering of the car, so make sure the car is compliant. It's nice to have a car that is fast. It's nice to have a car that is reliable. Indeed, that's a prerequisite to win races. But if it's to be disqualified after the race, is not really worth it. So the first thing is make sure that the car is compliant with regulation, and some of the stuff are relatively easy and straightforward. That doesn't require too much, such that the seat belt are still valid. They are valid for a few years. So you need to make sure that what is fitted on the car is still valid. Usually we have brand new parts almost all the time, so not much stress there. But there is also other aspects which are more, I would say, performance related, like the weight of the car, for instance, like some geometrical dimensions. So the car is controlled with several jigs. So that's a big part to do there, especially in the sense that all the official control take place at the FIA, but you don't necessarily have the freedom to go to the FIA as much as you want during the race weekend, simply because of time constraints. So it's important to really spend a lot of time that day to make sure that you calibrate your own tools in the garage to the one from the FIA, and make sure that what you measure in the garage is similar to what the FIA will measure on the D-Day, such that you can really prepare the car. So that will be usually the second day at the track. And then the third and fourth day are basically the running day. So the running day is always usually the same. You have a short briefing before the session, reminding everyone what's the plan. Obviously, what you plan 3-4 days in advance is always refined, and there is some variation. So you make sure everyone is aware of what are the changes. You go with the mechanics about which tire they're gonna use, roughly when do we stop, for how long do we stop, what are we planning during the stop, with always the scenario A, let's say, and then sorry, it went wrong, so we go to B, C, D, E, F, and usually you have planner to Z, and then sometimes you do Z A, Z B, but whatever. So you do this kind of briefing, then obviously the session itself, and after the session you debrief quickly with the driver to know what's been good, what has been wrong. While you're doing this debriefing in general, all the other engineers, so all the specialists, all the experts, have already started to look into the data collected from the car. So once you're finished with the debrief with the driver, they can feed you back with critical information, such that you can then go into the following session, eventually adjusting the plan or just confirming what was already defined beforehand, and you keep doing like that until the qualifying moment. And qualifying and race are relatively handled in the same manner. You always have a briefing. This is our strategy for that session. This is what we are planning. then you execute it, you debrief, and you go into the next one. You just use the data from what just happened, all the information you collected on what just happened to refine what was initially defined for the next step. And something as simple in the race, I mean, you have various scenarios. If I'm starting on pole, if I'm starting P5, if I'm starting P10, if I'm starting P20, and also I'm starting P5, but who is around me? So that's all the kind of stuff that are constantly refined afterwards. Yeah, and then usually after the race, hopefully you have a good result. If you have a good result, then you spend quite a bit of time with your friend from the FIA to make sure that your car is compliant. And hopefully it is. And once this is done, there is again big debriefing of the entire weekend. This one usually takes quite a bit of time, the whole team together. And then after you dismantle everything again, and you start at the next venue. It looks like a circus, to be honest. I always say I work in a circus, but I mean the Formula One circus term is not for nothing. It's really like you go somewhere, you build your tent, you do your show, you dismantle the tent, and you move to the next city to repeat.
I was about to say, it does sound like a lot. I mean, once you get the hang of it, it probably isn't too much. But what would you say is your favorite part of working trackside and then in Formula E in general?
Racing, for sure. I like the tension of qualifying. Because it's really tense and really short, and you basically don't have many shots. The race itself, even if it's quite short, because we're only talking about something like 45 minutes, it's much longer, so you always have more time to react. Qualifying is really intense. You have 2, maximum 3 attempts, and you can't really miss that one. So qualifying is a bit special for sure, but the race is by far my favorite part. I mean, I would be happy to skip everything before and just go racing. It's because that's really where, I mean, that's ultimately what brings you point for the championship. First of all, everything that happened before is, I won't say for nothing, but you know, I mean, you finish P2 of free practice 1 and P3 of free practice 2, you gain a chocolate medal. Qualifying, okay, you can start to get some points if you do a pole position, for instance, you got an extra points, so that starts to be a bit more interesting for the championship. But let's be honest, everything which is before is just I would say for the win, what counts at the end is the race itself. So that's really the deciding moment. And it's that's really where you need to put everything together as a team, because I mean, obviously it looks like a lot of decisions are being taken by the race engineer, and most of the decisions, yes, are finally taken by the race engineer, and then is broadcasted now live on TV, and that's why it looks like, but it's a team of many people putting things together to allow you to take the best decision. So that's really where you need to emulate as a team the best performance possible, and that's just 45 minutes of very intense concentration, and that's really cool. I often say that I feel more tired after 45 minutes racing in Formula E than I was after 6 hours of racing in endurance, for instance, because the amount of decision and information to analyze in that period of time is much higher than what you have to deal with in endurance racing, for instance.
Absolutely. So probably the biggest difference between endurance racing you did and Formula E is obviously the battery and the whole powertrain. So how is Formula E different since there is no fuel, especially during the race, maybe?
I would say the fuel is probably the less. It's funny because I often have that question, and it's something that seems to fascinate people a lot, but it doesn't make much difference, to be honest. The only difference between fuel or no fuel is that the car, the weight of the car, is consistent throughout the race. That's a parameter that we don't have to handle in Formula E. It's relatively simpler in that sense. But it doesn't make a difference as such, because it's something which is relatively easy to handle, even more conventional race car, let's say. There are 4 far more specific features of Formula E which are not understood or underestimated that make it quite interesting. A simple example is, you mentioned the battery and the electrical motor, is the fact that we slow down the car mostly with the electric machine. So we are not using brake effectively. There is brakes on the car, but we are using them very little. This has quite a few implications. It has few implications on the vehicle dynamics, how the car reacts under braking, because braking at the wheel or braking the entire car or at the chassis level is something different in terms of car balance and car handling during braking. So that's the first specifics. But also, it opened up a field of possibilities in terms of software development and control systems, which is quite deep, to be honest, because there you enter clearly in the area where you can do pretty much everything you want. And that part is, for me, much more important and makes much more difference to more conventional race car. It will start to be similar if you talk about hybrids, so Formula One or the hypercar category in endurance, but still more limited because you still have most of the braking which happen on normal brake. And in Formula E with the Gen 3 car, we are talking, I would say a rough number is 90% of the braking is made on the electric motor, front and rear axle. So that's quite unique, and this is a biggest difference and the biggest challenge to other racing series. Something which is also quite unique, and here we are. So we talk about the technical aspect, for instance. Another one which is pretty unique and usually blown everyone's mind when they arrive from other racing series to Formula E is the weekend format. I mean, racing everything so compact in one day is a really specific challenge. I mean, if you go, let's say you go to Formula One, you do your free practice one, an hour and a half to go through your program, then you have 3-4 hours before free practice two. It's like super comfortable. You have live telemetry, you have 60 engineers to look into car data. It's relatively relaxed. You arrive into Formula E, you have half an hour free practice session, where you need to do lap at race power, where you need to do lap at qualifying power, where you need to do push lap for preparing qualifying, where you need to do energy lap for preparing the race, where you just say, okay, on one side I have 1.5 hours with only flying lap, push lap to do. On the other side, I have half an hour with 4 different type of lap to do. So let's start to say, okay, it's a bit complex. And then say, okay, fine, session is done. I can relax. No, in 1 hour, you start again. Excuse me, in what? So that's something that's blown everyone's mind when you start into Formula E, because it's a real challenge on its own. You need to somehow unlearn what your brain and your engineering formation has taught you for years, because you need to be able to still do an analysis job as objectively as possible, but you don't have the time to really do it, and you don't have necessarily the resources to really do it properly. So you need to find new techniques, you need to find new criteria, you need to work a bit more feeling based or a bit more subjective, and that's something that takes a bit of time, and that's very unique to Formula E. This you cannot find anywhere else, to be honest. And this is a bit underestimated and far more complex than handling the fuel.
Well, I can just say from listening to everything, there just seems to be so much going on with being a race engineer. I don't know if that's just because I've never looked into it properly before, but as racing roles is all about job roles, I do want to know how much of this job is actually on the job description. So what is there a lot of hidden clauses that you found out? Basically.
That's a good one, to be honest. I don't know. It's been a long time I haven't seen the job description of a race engineer role, thankfully, to be fair. Probably quite a few missing bits, that's for sure. I mean, usually, as far as I remember, what you try to highlight is the need of planning, which we discussed a little bit about, the need of being able to do technical analysis, the need to be able to manage people. So that's all the kind of thing that you can list on the job description. But up to a point you arrive there and you really see how it is going and have to deal with it. It's it's a world apart. I will tend to say but that's the beauty of the job as well. Is there's never one day like another one in the office. I mean, the last time I got bored at the racetrack, can't even remember, to be honest. So no, yeah, sorry, I don't have a really good answer for that, but yeah, if you want to be in that career, which I can only highly recommend if you're passionate about, obviously, and if you are ready for all the possible bad aspects of the job, because there are some. It's a cool one. It's quite rewarding. You never get bored, but yeah, be prepared for the unexpected and be prepared to be surprised every 5 minutes.
Okay, well, there we go. So we're probably going to move on from the job part now to more the career path and everything needed before you actually get into the job role. We went to our Instagram as well. We got a lot of questions from people who are listening. So there's going to be a mix of both of those right now.
Fine.
There we go. It's my turn again. So the kind of most standard question is, where and what did you study?
Uni, which for a French guy is not the common path, but whatever. So no, uni, bachelor and master into physics. I mean, that was called applied science, or can't even remember the applied science. No, mathematics and applied science or something. But yeah, but basically physics and math. But there is, I mean, there is many, let's say, path you can follow. Studying is special. Studying is far from what the industry reality is in general. It's not just motorsport, it's just in general. I think there is a real world apart between what the university believe industry is and what the industry actually is. Even if they keep talking constantly, to be honest, it seems that they don't talk the same language, and it's like you're always like, well, anyway. But the thing is, I mean, you can do something into math, you can do something into more IT, data science now. You can do something which is purely based on physics. You have master degree which are highly specialized in aeronautics, aerodynamics, etc., etc. You have to find the study that suits you and that suits your situation, because not everyone can move to that super famous university which is across their border. Not everyone has necessarily the chance to be able to finance that. I think the most important is that you find a university degree and a course, a path that suits your situation and yourself, that allows you to create and structure your way of thinking, your way of acting, more than teaching you a specialty. If you manage to structure your brain and your mind in a manner that you keep always learning yourself when you need to learn something specific, that will be far more important than the degree you have yourself. So yes, a bachelor or a master is usually the right path, but it can be computer science, it can be pure mechanical, it can be it doesn't really matter. Most important is that you structure your way of working, you become analytics, you become a good planner. You are good in communication, because communication is a part important of the job, because if you're not able to communicate your plan properly, then it can be misunderstood, and if it is misunderstood, then the wrong decision will be taken. So all these aspects, which are finally far beyond the pure technical aspect, I would say. And that would be for me the main point. Then after, if you have the chance to be able to go to that famous university or have that degree which is maybe more linked with the industry, that will be a help for sure, but I will not see it as a no-go. And probably the biggest help that uni will bring you, especially if they have a master of bachelor which is more specialized into the motorsport usual activity, so let's say aerodynamics, for instance, will be the network with the industry that the university has. Because doing your network is probably the biggest challenge. But that's the only difference. And somehow, in my personal opinion, and I can relate that to me because I didn't work in a university that was, motorsport wasn't anything. So I didn't have any network from the university. I had to build myself. I think somehow if you start from, let's say, without that easiness of having that network, and you manage to create by yourself, by contacting people, by doing the extra mile, basically, that somehow show even bigger motivation, because you could see that there were some walls on the way, and that those walls were escalated, going through, and I think it's gives a good vision on how motivated that person is to get into the job. But yeah, the degree itself doesn't really matter.
It actually means a lot to us, the things you've said, because one of the big missions of what we do is making sure that people don't feel the need to have gone to the top university, or we want information to be accessible to everyone regardless of where they are in the world. So yeah, that means a lot of what you said, and especially because I think all of us started without a real network, and we're building it up thanks to this, and thanks to people like you who volunteer their time to come and talk to us. So actually, on a similar vein, we actually had a couple of people asking if a degree is absolutely necessary or if experience is substitutable, and what happens if they don't have access to work experience. What are the sort of compromises to get into the role?
I think you still need a minimum of a degree, or for some country is simply because you cannot get a job if you don't have it. There is some legal constraint that you can be named an engineer, for instance, in the UK, if you don't have a minimum certain certification, whether it's a uni certification or if you go through a longer, let's say, path that you can make your work experience recognized by whatever organism which is the engineering society of that country. So that is a degree can be required in some situation simply because of that. Second thing, I still think a degree, despite what I just described before, is a prerequisite to build that structural way of working, that analytic way of working, etc., which I was describing. So the content itself is not so important, but what you can get in terms of methodology can be quite important, quite critical. So I would still, at minimum, recommend to have a bachelor in something which is close to engineering. And as I said, it doesn't need to be that super specialized bachelor in math if you're not good or just average in math. That's not right. I mean, most of the time I'm doing addition, subtraction, multiplication at work. The last time I had to make a complex calculus was some time ago. I mean, I'm still able to do them, but it's not like your day-to-day job. You know? And you will always find someone in the team that can support you if you struggle with. And today with internet, you can find anything. You will find someone that will be able to help you. You will be able to learn what you are missing. But the methodology, the way of working, this you need to gather, and uni remains a good way to do that. So a bachelor, I will tend to say, is a minimum. Now, there was a point which I think was important that you said, is about I don't have access to working experience. I will sound a bit rude there, but I think sometimes it's important to be. it's by definition, when you are a student, a dream job. You use that terminology a little bit earlier in the call. What does it mean being a dream job from a pure crew reality? It means you have 10 times minimum more applicants than job available. If you want to be that one, you need to be able to do the extra mile. You need to be able to demonstrate that you are more motivated than all the others, that you are the one. That's the minimum you can do, because otherwise, well, you're just a number in the mass. So one of the good ways to show you're motivated to do into the job is to do sacrifice. And it's anyway a good preparation, because you will spend your entire life sacrificing stuff when you go that career. So yeah, do that extra mile. Go and find the experience. You won't find it at your doorstep, that's for sure. You may have to go quite far, but that's really important. If I take my personal case, I started to hang in paddocks, I think around 15, 16, trying to volunteer, proposing people just to go and clean the garage when they were packing down. At the end of the day, just go cleaning tires, cleaning wheels, all sort of shit job that I could do for free. Sometimes even paying myself for my expenses, because they were not keen to pay for my expenses. But I was just so desperate to get into paddocks, be able to talk to people and start to create that network, and then showing what I was capable of doing. Oh, then maybe you come the next race weekend is there, and this time we pay you your fuel, etc., etc. So yeah, if you're not able already to commit to such sacrifice, which are not big, to be honest, already today as a student, you won't probably not be able to be ready for the sacrifice that the career will request, to be honest. And again, it's also, despite the sacrifice and being ready for the career itself, is about being remarkable compared to a mass of people, because in any way, for one job, there will be 100 people applying for it. So all you show, I mean, if you all have the same degree, same sort of degree, all coming with the same sort of experience, how do you demark yourself? Show your motivation, show that you can do more. And this, racing team guys, even at very high level, they are very pragmatic, and they all kind of have gone through the same path anyway. So that will talk to people, that will speak to them. And I'm having a lot of requests on social media or on professional network about student and career, and I always try to reply. Sometimes I'm a bit late because I'm a bit busy, but I always try to reply. And when people ask me advice, that the one I can give is this one: do the extra mile. Show that you are more motivated than anyone else. You need to have the teeth really on the ground, making like 2 big rows, because you want to be the best and you want desperately to have the job.
On that note, I think a dilemma that myself, Chris, and plenty of other students have is it worth sacrificing studying your life away, trying to get top grades for the sake of having those top grades, or is it better to try and mix experience while still having good but not top grades, things like Formula Student, which obviously takes up a lot of time, things like going to the track on weekends and potentially volunteering with a team, things like that. Where's the ideal balance in your opinion?
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one because there is a reality of motorsport that you are either on the extremely high-end level of motorsport, Formula E, Formula One level, extremely professional racing team or OEM manufacturer involved in there, which will requires high skills, high expertise, high competency, and there you need, the good university degree, or let's say structure that we were discussing about, and the experience. And then you have a majority of motorsport, which is a lot more amateur, still professional, but a lot more amateur, where you have a lot less people, where the roles are covering not just one but more, and here probably the experience will be more important than the degree itself. So it all depends what you what's your career target. I will tend to say, if we say people are targeting the very top level of motorsports, I will put a bit more emphasis on the university. Let's say I will never compromise getting my degree for having an experience, but I will always try to have both until I feel I'm reaching the point where I'm putting the obtention of my grade, of my degree, under threat by volunteering at the track every race weekend. And this is very personal, because we are all different in that regard. I had the chance that I didn't need to work much at uni to have the minimum to guarantee the degree, so I could afford a bit more time at the track. I also know, and I have seen people that really needed to work a lot at home to be able to have the same result than some others. So as we are all different, it's difficult for me to give an exact balance, but the advice will be never put at threat the obtention of your degree. And this is very personal. This you have to find yourself. And that's anyway a good exercise, because knowing yourself and knowing your own limit is something that in the motorsport career, but just generally in life, is good to know.
Absolutely. Okay, so thank you. And what do you think in general the teams look like when hiring a race engineer, or maybe in general a trackside engineer? So yeah, what do you think the teams look the most at?
Obviously previous record. It's easier to be hired when you have had results, and when you were proven to have been instrumental in those results. Results in motorsport is a very bizarre notion, because you can spend years and years and years and years not getting much result, then you can have quite a few suddenly, and then you can go away again, or like you can be at the top for many years from the very beginning of your career, and then be nowhere for the second half of your career. So it's always something a bit strange, but there is for sure some aspect like that. I mean, usually you start to get a good level when people comes to see you, not you looking for a job. Let's put it this way, and that's usually on the more exposed role what will happen. So you don't really, they come to you, whatever they recognize in you is difficult to say, but they mostly come to you. When you start, if we take more something closer to your case, so student going into the industry, well, we already touched base on relatively shortly before, is motivation and this willingness of doing more than the others. So this willingness of doing what I call the extra mile, which is quite important, because there is no secret. The one that is working the hardest is the quickest. It's relatively simple. I mean, there's always few, yeah, but maybe I don't have the right racing driver, this or that. I mean, if you work hard and you have a fast car, you will also attract the fast racing driver. You will attract the right financing. So you will create a dynamics around yourself. So this appetite in doing the extra mile is for me quite important, and show the motivation. I think what teams will look like as well is your ability to take a step back and to have an overall look of the situation, really seeing the big picture, and some more, I would say, think outside the box a little bit. Thinking outside the box means being able to solve a problem. That's basically what engineers do in the most efficient manner. Usually the problem we face don't have just an answer. They may have multiple answers too. And being able to see all of those answers quickly and accurately so that you can decide the most efficient one, which usually is the simplest one by definition, then you will make a difference. So that come back again to how you've been structured during your study, how structured you are in thinking, how methodologic you are in thinking, in analyzing, and then in reporting. So that will be this kind of aspect that they will look like. As I said, I mean, for me, the famous university, there is quite a few in motorsport, obviously. They are more a help for the network and getting the connection to be able to talk with the recruiter or with the head of department in the various team, various OEM to get the job interview. But that's pretty much it, to be fair. The rest is more specific, is more human related. I mean, you can have something extremely smart coming from a very small university in the south of Italy, and having someone completely stupid out of this very famous college from London. Which one I will hire? Probably the one from South Italy, not the one from London. But at the same time, you can have the opposite. You can have someone very, very stupid coming from Italy, from south of Italy, and someone very smart from that college of London. So there is no guarantee. That's where you need to the personality and what you can demonstrate is for me the most important, and what I will be looking at. We talk about formula students. You mentioned formula students. I mean, formula student exists for quite some years. I think it started at the end of the 70s or early 80s, actually. So it's super, super old. Somehow it got democratized recently. That became really, really famous in the last 10 to 5 years. It wasn't that famous, actually, when I was studying myself. And somehow I regret, because it's a fantastic lab. And I think today, formula students can be one of these tools that you should use as a young engineer to differentiate yourself and make you known from the industry. Because the industry is looking formula student quite a bit through sponsoring, mentoring, etc., etc. And the industry has realized that, damn, they are really smart. Because the advantage of formula students is it's quite simple. It's the most free motorsport category in the world. So it's even more free than what Formula One is doing. So that's where you can really see how people are good at problem solving, thinking outside the box, bringing efficient solution in a costly, effective manner, which becomes something that race teams start to look even more and more and more, because there is those financial regulation aspect now, as quite recently well highlighted in Formula One, which are coming into place. And I think Formula Student is the perfect lab for that. So, and that can answer all the questions, that show you how better you can be than some of these really good universities compared to some small ones. So you can really differentiate yourself, and you can demonstrate all the elements that a team will look for. So I will definitely go full flat out with Formula Student if I could redo my study today, because I think it's really a good lab for it, and it's more and more and more looked into by the professional.
So other than Formula Student, just for anyone listening, because most likely the people listening in want to go into and be a race engineer, is there one thing that you think people need to know about your job role, and maybe one piece of advice for anyone planning to go into this role?
There's quite a few. If I would have to select one,
I don't think they'll mind having more than one. I think they'll take as
okay.
they can get.
No, but if we take, I think, one which is quite important. Remember, you're not essential. Remember, you're not essential, because race engineers have been put in the spotlight quite a bit again in the last few years with TV coverage, access to radio communication and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, I will not be the one to say we are useless. But if you put it into perspective, if you will have to, let's say, have 2 race cars and you opt for the 2 race cars to hit the track at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you give one of those race cars to mechanics only and the second race car to engineers only, I'm pretty sure the one with mechanics only will go on track at 8, and the one with engineer at 8:30 will still be in the garage and will try to figure out how to get out. And I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. So remember, you're not essential. Remember, it's a teamwork. That you are just a chain of that teamwork, and you're by far not the more important one. So yes, if I'm not there, maybe the car is not as performant, maybe the driver is not as performant, maybe the racetrack is not performant, maybe they won't manage to emulate as good as they will do if I'm there, because I will be able to manage this guy, take all the information and put everything together. But if I don't have mechanics to put the wheel on the car, to make sure the car is charged, or simply to strap the driver in the car will stay in the garage. And it's quite easy when you are an engineer, because that's all you've been formatted by university, by the way. It's quite easy quickly, especially when you start to have a bit of success in motorsport, to become arrogant and to forget that part. And I think it's just important to step back a little and bring things back on the ground. So that will be my big takeaway, I would say.
On that, you also said that it's all about managing everyone else. So where does this job lead? What's the next step up? And also personally, what are your next steps, if you can disclose them?
Well, I guess the normal step in then role of chief race engineer, and then eventually later on take more management role. It's relatively rare that the track side career bring you to a role in pure design and technical director role, not in high level motorsport, not anymore. It was the case. There is some still hold in other which started their career when both worlds were together, and I experienced myself that when I was doing Formula 3, the old Formula 3 format, when we were a small team doing development, so designing part and then racing in the weekend. But that's not really the trend anymore now. The design roles and track side roles are quite split, and it's more difficult to merge. But yeah, chief racing engineer role, and eventually then moving into a sporting director role, as it's called, or team management is probably the right next step. What is mine? I think I've done some other roles. When I left endurance being chief race engineer for an LMP1 team, looking after 2 cars. I achieved quite a few of the targets I had in motorsports, and now I'm more into the idea of enjoying what I do to the fullest, and I'm pretty happy with what I have. Let's put it this way. I think it's a career which is demanding in many aspects, extremely rewarding as well. Otherwise, that would not be worth it. But yeah, after some years, I think you kind of lower maybe not lower the expectation, but consider other priorities, I would say.
So, what part exactly of your job do you find the most fulfilling?
Winning races.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
It's a very basic one, but I mean, let's put it this way: there is no second place. I mean, if you're second, you're first loser. And even when you win race, you tend to criticize your job and say, well, I could have won the race, but with a bigger advantage, with going even quicker. And that's normal, because that's what pushes you to be a better person, a better engineer, a better team, and fight for more win and more championship. But yeah, eventually winning races is probably the coolest part. It's a very short but very good feeling that usually lasts few minutes, and then the euphoria goes on, and then you start again. But it's a quite cool few minutes, I have to say.
Last very meaningful question before we move on to the fun ones. In London this summer, we talked about what it means to be an engineer and to never forget that. Would you be able to share that with our audience? Because I thought that was a really nice thing you said.
Yeah, well, that's actually linked to an aspect which I touched base on earlier on, which is the thinking outside the box. And somehow we can also relate that to the university advice. What it means to be an engineer, the real Latin meaning of the word engineers is to be ingenious. So by definition, you are not someone that is solving complex mathematical problem, complex physical problem. You're someone that have ID and that is able to trigger a field of expertise around yourself to put this idea into place. That's what you have to be. That's what is thinking outside the box. As I said a bit earlier on, we are problem solver. My problem to solve is how can I go from A to B as quick as possible using the less energy possible. And to solve that problem, I have different way. And I need to find the most obvious one and the most efficient one. Sorry, and usually the most efficient is the simple one. So that's what being ingenious. You can take a very easy example, which I will borrow from Formula One from some years ago, which was the F duct and S duct system that was put in Formula One. It was just a very basic mock-up that was done quickly and dirtily into a workshop that allowed to gain a lot of speed in straight line, and was just basically blocking a hole with the driver hand. And then say, yeah, but the driver cannot drive the car with only one hand. Yeah, no problem. We move the hole and we lock that with the knee of the driver instead of the hand. So we have the two hands on the steering wheel all the time. That's what it is. It wasn't the most complex problem solution was something very simple, very efficient, that was able to be deployed very quickly. Therefore, it was used very quickly as well, and therefore it gave an advantage very quickly. And that's really what it is, being in use, having ideas that no one else has to solve a problem. And if you need someone really good at math to solve it at some point, or to put this idea into place, then you will find him. You don't need to do it yourself. Your job is to find the idea, and then to find the people that can make the idea happen.
All right, so I've just got some quick fire questions, just some fun ones. You can pass if you're not allowed to say anything. So, if you had to change jobs or racing series, what else would you choose?
If I would have to change job, I think I will be a mechanic. I think I will be a mechanic because they always have something to say, and they always have a million of questions saying, nah, I would not do that if I was you. So I will be a mechanic to annoy my engineer. No, I mean, but more seriously, which is true. I mean, they do, but it's in a good manner. Don't get me wrong. There is many jobs. I think if I would have to choose something, I would choose something which is not technical, to try to discover a new aspect. The people which are looking after sponsoring are extremely important, because without money you don't race. And what it takes to talk with possible partners to bring big budget is something extremely interesting. Equally, people working in the marketing department is something also important, because eventually motorsport, yes, is about research and development and a fantastic laboratory, but it's also advertising to selling car. it's basic, but that's why OEM are involved in motorsport. Is their target at the end is to promote their technology and to sell cars. So I'm sure that in terms of marketing, there is few aspects also which are super interesting. People from logistics, making sure that everyone and everything arrive at the right time at the right place is probably a super interesting challenge. I'm basically keen to keep learning all the time. I need to keep learning new things. And if I would have to choose something, I will take something which is not technical at all, just to be able to learn those skills which are important and which allowed me since many years to do what I do, which is eventually what I was doing when I was 6 years old, which is playing with cars. It's just that the cars got a little bit bigger.
Okay, so what is the first thing you do when you get home? You're not working, you don't have any homework that you need to do.
You don't want the glamorous side. Usually laundry.
Okay.
No.
Right. For leisure.
You come back from 1 week away, so you live in your suitcase. So usually you have a big bag of dirty clothes to wash.
It's not too different from us when we get back from a race weekend. Recently, Christian and I did quite a few weekends of car-related things, and this weekend we had to take a weekend off to do laundry.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. So yeah, that's raised not through glamour, but laundry. I think is probably the first one.
I think it's good you get it done straight away. I think I just put it off. Eventually, when it needs to get done, it'll get done.
Okay.
Do you ever take any souvenirs home from work?
And if so, depends what you call as a souvenir. I mean, I always bring souvenir from the new country I visit, because that's one aspect of the job I really like, being able to meet different people, different culture. And I always try to bring something for my daughters as well, that they got a souvenir from each of those countries as well. But that's not really from work. that's just from the traveling. From work itself, yeah, I have few parts or equipment. I mean, I have got a steering wheel somewhere. I got my racing overall from when I won WEC in 17. So I kept the overall and I framed it. I have an helmet just down here as well, which is from Andre, this one. So yeah, I've got few bits like that, but not much. I mean, it's, when you're at home, you don't want to be at work neither. So you need to find the right balance.
Okay, one more fun one. Now, this could be simple or it could be a thinker. Badly describe your job in 5 words, and then accurately describe your job in 3 words. The finger method.
I am a dream seller.
Okay.
Whatever the situation, you always sell dream, telling the team and the driver that everything will be fine, that will be super quick, that we will always be able to bring something back home. So I'm selling dream. So that was the bad description in 5 words. The accurate one in 3 words. I could have said I work in the circus as well. That would have worked. Accurately in 3 words, generalist or technical generalist, human manager, pressure handler will be the 3 words. I mean, it's a combination of 2 words each time, but that will be these three aspects.
Works for me.
I don't know if you're allowed to answer this one, but will there be recharge pit stops in season 9? And for those, and yeah, for those who are just not so familiar with Formula E, if you could just round off, give us a quick summary of how the races work and what's new this year.
So recharge pit stop. To be completely honest, we received the latest set of draft sporting regulation today, which is a document of many pages, which you need to read very carefully to make sure you don't miss anything. So I haven't reviewed the latest one yet. The final one will be, I think, published in 1 week, like the 19th of November or something like that, at the next FIA next Motorsport World Council. So I won't be extremely accurate, but I would say 90% the season will start without charge pit stop, but hopefully got introduced either during the season or next year at the latest. I think that will be cool to broadcast the message that fast charging is effectively possible, and that you just don't need to wait half an hour at the charging station on your way on the way to the vacation. I think that will be an important message to send to the population in general to promote EV a bit more. But I don't think we will start with at the beginning for various reasons, which I will not explain now. It will be boring, to be honest. What change for this year? Well, it's a complete different car, so more power and more and a lighter car. The car is roughly 100 kilograms lighter. It has a lot more power because race power is 300 kilowatts. Attack mode power or qualifying power will be 350. That's basically 100 kilowatts more than the previous generation of car, which is massive. For people which are not quite aware with kilowatts, let me make quickly a conversion. I never do it myself, but I need to find calculator. You see how good I am at math. But that should be something like 470 horsepower so that's quite powerful now for 800 kilograms. So the car is basically lighter and has more power. In terms of racing format, there will be some differences. The charge pit stop is a topic. I think that's really something that the target is to achieve very soon, but I don't think we will start with that. There is some possible surprise also on the attack mode, which will be quite cool, which I can't really again explain without the final regulation, but there will be more variety in strategy of using attack mode allowed in the regulation next year, which I'm really looking forward, because it's a new strategical element. The fan boost very likely will be dropped because it was quite controversial in how you can get fan boost or not. And to be honest, it wasn't a big racing element. I mean, I don't think there were many overtaking due to fan boost, if I'm honest. So that will be the main difference. The car is the biggest change, to be honest. And in terms of if we talk in terms of energy management, we basically come from being able to recuperate energy under braking only from the rear axle to now being able to recuperate energy on both front and rear axle, as we have also an electrical motor on the front, which is the same for all manufacturer, which is supplied by the FIA approved supplier. But that means that roughly 90%, probably a bit more, 90% of the kinematic energy under braking is now recuperated. So that leads to also a complete different approach in terms of energy management during the race. So that's the boring part for fans. That's the more interesting part for engineers, obviously. But due to the change in sporting regulation with the attack mode, the fan boost, and eventually later on the charge stop, and the difference in terms of car hardware and technology, the physiognomy of racing will be quite a bit different. And to be honest, we are not sleeping much at the moment because the season is just around the corner, and we are all working flat out to try to find that stuff that will make us quicker than everyone else. And which is difficult to find because obviously the entire field is quite smart and quite strong. So yeah, we'll see what will be the outcome, but will be different racing for sure.
All right. Another fun question is, what was your favorite Halo quote and who invented them? Whose idea were they?
Ooh. We invented the marketing department. Which was my favorite one? I didn't pay too much attention, to be honest. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. One final question. I have a feeling I might know the answer, but who's your favorite driver that you've ever worked with?
Ooh. You want me to have problem?
It's okay, we won't tell them, and I don't think they'll be seeing this.
Oh, not sure. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. I've been lucky. I worked with very talented driver, and they were all quite nice and cool. So I guess the answer you expect is Andre, and I can say that. Is definitely one of them. No, but I had a special relation. I had the chance to work with Bruno Senna and Nicolas Prost on the same car when we did the WEC. And I mean, they are first of all both extremely nice, smart person and human beings. And they were associated with an amateur driver, which his name is Julien Canal as well, which was fitting. I mean, that crew of driver was fitting very well together, and the atmosphere around that crew of driver was really special. But on top of that, when you add the fact that it's Ayrton nephew and Alain son, and all the story there is with these two names, and all the anecdote, all the story that we could discuss about during this collaboration, that was quite cool. But they were mostly and first of all really nice human beings, as Andre is obviously. I think I have the chance to have remained friends with most of the racing drivers with who I work with. Not all of them, but quite a few, and not the slowest one. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I probably now start to receive, well, not now, but soon when you will publish that, a lot of messages and phone call and complaints. So thanks.
We do like to ask this question, and it does get everyone into trouble.
Okay.
But yeah, no, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Thank you.